All right, I want to talk about this series that I read last year. This is the Three Body Problem series, or the Remembrance of Earth Past series, and I wish more people would get into it. I want to talk about it a little bit. I will try to have no spoilers. I would love to do a spoiler cast kind of discussion about the series if people had also read it and would like to do that. But I wish more people would read it. It is written by this Shijin Liu. Probably didn't get that right. This guy from China. And he's kind of, as far as I can tell, sort of like the godfather of Chinese sci-fi. And it has appealed to a lot of people. I think it's been picked up maybe for a Netflix series, so I'm sure more people will get into it eventually. But also a lot of people burn out of this first book, which is the smallest one of the series. Now, I think before going into why I love it so much, I think a reason why people do burn out of it's a lot of people don't love sci-fi because it doesn't have a lot of, or sometimes it doesn't have a lot of great characters. You know, there are epics with, epics that kind of take on the same sort of form as a lot of fantasy. In that way, they're kind of married to each other. But sometimes sci-fi is more about the situation. And I am more that kind of sci-fi reader. I'm kind of new to the sort of fantasy genre and fantasy sci-fi genre. I am a lot more about kind of the situation and the quiet moments of sci-fi. Now, I think that's a part of the reason why people burn out is because even though this situation is fascinating, there are not a lot of great characters in the series, admittedly. There are a few that I think are interesting, but it's much more about the Earth and about the Earth as a whole and how they would prepare for this situation more than it is about the individual parts, even though there are clearly some standouts within the series. But it's just not its strong point. Now, it can be kind of techno-babbly and jargony, which can be a little bit jarring. But I think I don't think it should be too much of a struggle if you are interested enough in the situation itself. Now, what I will say, and it's got this from the blurb, I have kind of the Goodreads blurb in front of me just to make sure I don't go too far into it, but it is set in the Chinese Cultural Revolution. That's where it starts with the prologue of the first one, the three-body problem. And it's kind of a telling of that situation, that really kind of bloody era, when it's, it's something that has echoed in other times. Think of Socrates being put to death for corrupting the youth. The Chinese Revolution had some of that sort of thing where the academics were being targeted. And that's kind of how it is introduced in the prologue. Now, it goes to a few different eras. It jumps forward a little bit to a few different perspectives. One of the perspectives still has some of these academics and scientists, and they are all going crazy. They are all going nuts, and they are killing themselves. They're either terrified, something is going on that has them spooked, or is compelling them to just kill themselves. And on this other perspective, and I don't want to talk about this one so much, but I will kind of just keep it to what the blurb says. Imagine this group up in the mountains, this secretive kind of government-sanctioned whatever group or whatever, and they are sending out strong signals all over to all these different vectors or whatever you want to call it, basically asking if anyone's out there. And obviously some people would be against it, some people would be all for it. But a lot of what this series is, as a first contact, is what would happen if somebody finally answered way out there, someone super highly advanced, and said, yeah, we're out there, and we are on our way now that we know that you are there, and it's going to take us a long time, but you know, resistance is futile. Okay? What would the Earth do to prepare for that? So a lot of the series is basically, what would I do if I knew in 400 years aliens were going to show up, or however long, centuries? Would I care? Would I freak out? What would happen to the people who closer to the time were figuring, you know, we can see them and we can see that they're on their way. What can we do to prepare ourselves? Is it even possible to prepare ourselves? And a lot of the intrigue is seeing some potential kind of pathways that the Earth might take into preparing themselves for that. Now, the second book was my favorite one. It's a little jarring reading it because instead of chapters, it is split up into 3 or 4 parts, and it just goes for like 150 pages at a time. It just goes without really big breaks. But it is my favorite one, and it's the one that made me kind of look up into the sky a little bit differently. And this is where I can't say anything more than that, other than I want to do a spoiler cast discussion, maybe with other people who had read this series and liked it as much as I did. I really, really, really loved it. Now, the third book in the entry also was really great and just dials things up to... if I thought book 2 was dialed up, book 3 just takes it to a new level, and that's where some of the science started to get like... and lost me a little bit there. But I think even if you read the first 2 books, people would really, really, really love it. And I think after reading the first 2, you would want to keep reading. I think the third book. I really loved it. There is something in the first book which is kind of just interesting. This kind of game being played, this kind of virtual reality sort of thing, where there's a lot of sciencey stuff being explained and kind of processed by one of the main perspectives, and I think people would generally like it. Now, it clearly isn't for everyone because a lot of people can't get through this first book, and they are not super interested in the premise. But I think if that sounded interesting, if you are interested in kind of seeing, interesting theories of where the world could kind of develop in response to this sort of threat, I think you would like it. I think, as far as I know, there's some controversy about the author himself. I haven't really gone into that, but really the story he tells, I think, is fantastic. And if you are able to get through some of that sciencey sort of stuff, and you don't need super strong characters, but you are more fascinated with situations, I think it's very interesting. In a way, I think I get the same out of Malazan, even though the characters are much stronger, much, 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 much stronger. I am also just fascinated with this big picture sort of thing going on. So it scratches the same nerve, but not at all in some ways. So just wanted to leave that there. And have you read this? Have you also read it? And if you want, you can watch my stupid little clip thing that I made a while ago that I had fun doing. So anyway, I'll see you on the next video.